So this past weekend, I was at the Salt Lake Open playing in the under 1100 section of the tournament. After the last under 1100 section, I went 3 out of 4. So I was pretty excited about coming back to this one and hopefully winning the whole thing. Because after this, I'm gonna go into the under 1700 rated section and try my best there. But I'm coming into under 1100. I'm prepared. Each of these games are 45 minutes with 5-second increment. So these games could go potentially an hour and a half. And they can be pretty long marathon sessions. So my first opponent, he's a man in his, I would say, 30s to 40s. And he was rated like around 1050. So probably my highest rated opponent at this point in the, like, all of my tournament matches in the under 1100 section. So I was pretty bummed. I was like, man, my first opponent has to be pretty tough, but it didn't go too well. Too bad. So I started off as black. My opponent is white here. And he starts off with E4, and I go into my Caro-Kann as I usually do, and we go into an advanced variation, which is my bread and butter and probably my best variation of the Caro-Kann opening. I go into it. We go into the very normal steps. I get my development. He wants to trade off the bishop, so I trade off the knight. I push up. He then tries to defend these pawns, and I bring out this queen here. And he brings out this knight, and this is a big problem because take. You can't. There's too many attackers on that one pawn. So I'm able to just pick up that pawn pretty easily. He tries to attack my queen, but I put the king in check, bringing this pawn out. I then take this bishop here. Very good for me. After they take back, I just take with the knight. The center is very firmly under my control, and I go back attacking the queen. So at this point, I have a 10-point advantage. I just have to make sure I don't throw it away. So I just continue my development as much as possible and pushing up. He kicks my queen out, but I say, hey, I'm going to take this pawn with my knight. The reason being, if he didn't take back, there's a fork there. 1, 2, I can take it back with the bishop here. So I put the king in check. King retreats. I take with the knight with the pawn. I'm now up 7.5 points. I go and attack the rook. He takes there with check. I just move the king out of check. He moves the rook out. I bring my rooks into the game and just kind of trade off the queens at this point. Once the queens are off the board, I feel like I'm up a piece. This is going to be really easy to convert. I just have to make sure I play tactical chess and don't throw away any easy pieces. So we kind of shuffle around, making sure that we don't mess up. I throw this check here, trying to simplify the game as much as possible. And once I took the rook and simplified, my opponent resigned. So I start off the day 1-0. I'm pretty stoked about it. So I'm up 1-0. I'm feeling very good about myself. It's still early in the morning. I didn't sleep well the night before because I was so excited for the tournament. And so I come into the second round and I'm playing against another man. He's probably in his 40s. Maybe close to 50. He has a gray beard, and I am white. I go with E4. He goes E6. We're going into French opening, and so I'm like, great. I'll do my exchange variation, but then he throws in this fianchetto like position, and I was like, okay, I guess we're going into like a King's Indian attack now. And but when I do that, I completely just like blitz it out and not think that, oh, this pawn is hanging. So he takes the pawn right away, and I'm like, crap, Zach, you're an idiot. You're playing down a pawn on the freaking 4th move of the game. So I'm like, all right, don't freak out. Just play solid development. Worry about it then. He tries to expand on the queen side. I try to just stop that right away. And he brings his knight out. I go and try to pin the knight to the queen, and I just trade it off. And then once the queen's out, I'm just developing, trying to protect this pawn from being taken. He then continues to push on the queen side. I'm thinking he's wanting to come over here to b5, so I go straight to a4. Bishop comes out, and this is very uncomfortable for me, having these 2 bishops aimed at the king with the queen out here. Things are looking bad. I'm about a point and a half behind because I lost my pawn early up. So what I do is I try to just develop this rook. He castles. I get this knight out of the way. I want to exchange bishops. He says, great, let's do that. He brings the knight out, and I bring this knight in, forking the queen and the bishop here. And I'm like, great, I got the 2 deadly bishops off the map. From here, I just have to make sure I don't let him get into my queen side because these pawns are pretty scary. So after he takes back, I go threaten the queen. Queen drops back, and I drop back here because I'm thinking, okay, you're gonna have a knight outpost here, and that's gonna be very uncomfortable once you get the knight anywhere over here, especially as these pawns start to push down. So he comes down here. I'm like, cool, let's trade off the knight. He says no. I would say, great, I'm gonna go over here and possibly attack. I had ideas of going here and attacking the queen because the pawn can't take. Queen drops back, so then I drop back here saying, hey, I'm not gonna let him get there. Queen comes here, and he's slowly improving his position from this point. And so I say, hey, let's trade knights. Still doesn't want to trade me, so I'm like, trade me the knight. But he now pins the knight to my king, and I'm very uncomfortable at this point. And so I break that pin with my little rook outpost here. And now he forks the pawn and the rook. I say, wait, we're gonna have to trade that off. I drop the rook back, but now this pin no longer exists on my knight. He drops the knight back, and I say, cool, I'm gonna try to keep this pawn here as much as possible. And then I'm surprised that he didn't take here, because it's not like I could take back. He pushes forward, and that gives me a little bit of leeway. So then I create my own knight outpost, taking up as much space as possible. And he's trying to maneuver, and I just don't want to let him get into any of these squares here. So I basically try to shut him out as much as possible and kick out the knight. So he kicks out the knight over here to h7. I bring the queen out here looking to defend this knight if they do start to bring pieces down. I was expecting this pawn move, which is why I brought the queen. I move the knight back. They bring the con. I trade, and then I shut the door again. I said, nope, I control the center. You're not getting in. Knight comes out here, but there's really nowhere for it to really go. I bring the other rook over here to defend. He brings the queen over, and I bring this king over just in case I want to move this, threaten the queen. We can do all the trades, and I will be fine. So he moves the knight over there. I then throw this knight over here looking to exchange rooks and simplify the position, which he gladly obliges. And then I throw a check here. King comes down. I then take the free pawn. So at this point, I've completely equalized after losing my pawn early on in the in the beginning of the game. And so I'm threatening the queen now. He drops in here, threatening this pawn, which is really uncomfortable for me. This is not what I want him to do, but he's offering the queen trade. And I think, yeah, that's a pretty strong pawn majority, but I think I'm still gonna win, because if I take here, this comes down, you have doubled up pawns. I don't have to really move this pawn, and it gives my king enough time to get over here. So I take the pawn. We're still in a straight draw position. I'm racing my king over. I throw a check, and I want to like get my knight in the game as much as possible, latchet that down, get my king in a good spot. And instead he pushes here, which is a mistake on his part, because I take, and I'm able to get this pawn before he's able to do anything. And so at this point, I now have the advantage when it comes to the end game. And now that this king's over here with his knight, I can always drop it here. It's time to go work on the king side here with these three pawns and try to get him in advance. I trade these off as quick as possible, creating a pass pawn. And he creates his knight outpost, but I don't think that's that great. I just have to go around and escort this pawn up. He creates the outpost. I then go to move the king, but he goes to attack my knight, so I move it over here. There's nothing he can do about my knight. And for some reason, he says, hey, let's trade this out. You got a pass pawn, but I think I'll be able to win in the counting game, but he won't, because one, this pawn is never getting passed. Two, I just have to get this king in front of this pawn, and I get opposition. And from here, it's just, you do basic opposition. I escort this pawn up. He can't stop it. Queen comes there. We take, and then I don't even worry about that pawn. I just push him in the corner, making sure I don't stalemate, and I get the checkmate. So 2-0. I'm real stoked about this. I feel like I have a good shot at winning the whole tournament, because in the first round, all the top rated level players actually lost their first game. So in terms of like the strongest players like meeting me in the final, might not actually happen. So we go into my third game, and so now I played two like middle-aged men, and in my third game, I'm playing a girl that's probably like 13 or 14 years old. She's around a 850 rated level player. I actually beat her brother in the last major tournament that was like 6 years old. So I was like, hopefully I can continue on this streak. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling very confident in my play. And so she's white, I'm black. She goes with e4. I go into the Caro-Kann again, and we go into a Karpov variation, which at the time I'm like, that's where I'm most comfortable in that kind of a Caro-Kann variation. She gives me the exchange, which I think is great. Develops the bishop, and she's slowly like getting her pieces out. When you just continue the development, I get that knight off the board real quick. I want to get my bishop over here to d6, get my queen out. I want to do all the things that attack. And so she drops a pawn right on the middle, and I'm like, great. Now I'm like, I have an advantage. I control the middle. This bishop's hanging. I'm also controlling this pawn here. Like, this is best case scenario. Pawn drops back. I take the pawn. Rook comes to the middle. I then throw a check on the king, and I say, great, let's trade off these bishops and castle, get to safety. She castles as well, and I'm up here at 5-point advantage. I'm feeling very good that I just need to like liquidate material, and I'm gonna play just fine. And so I get this knight on the outpost here, making sure we cut off the rook, and the queen comes here, so I go and attack the queen. what I'm wanting to do is I realize there's back rank here. So what I want is this queen to come out here. And so I throw out my knight being like, oh, hey, goody treat. If you want to take it, that's mate, because there's no way you can stop it. She says, no, I don't want to do that. I say, okay, I'll go attack the rook. And now there was a tactic here, I'm sure, but I'm not seeing it. I'm realizing now, looking at this advantage, I need to start pushing these pawns up and winning the queen side and getting this bishop out of the game. But for some reason, I'm not thinking I need to do. And I foolishly, when the rook's here in the corner, I should have gotten my rook into the game and controlled this open file. But now that my knight's here, I can't do that because I'm hanging back rank myself. I'm not setting myself up to a good spot. I get this here, and it's actually now her advantage. She then swiftly gives it back because what happens here is she had a really good move where you fork the knight. I either lose the knight or lose the game. So she could have easily taken the advantage. She doesn't do that. I then put the queen here, pinning the rook to the queen. And then she unpins the queen. And then threatens my queen. I'm like just trying to maneuver my queen around, trying to play like the most solid chess possible, trying to protect all my weaknesses. But she's like starting to exploit it a little bit. We trade off, she gets in, and now she's on my queen side, and I have the weaknesses. And I can't throw a check here because the queen covers. I was really annoyed. My 5-point lead is now turned into about a 2-point lead. I go to defend the pawn. Now my lead's about a half point. And I finally say, great, let's get rid of the back rank. They push my knight out of the way. And now we're in a dead even game. Can't take here because I'll take here and there, but we liquidate the rooks. I can't throw this check because this bishop was the bane of my existence the entire game. And she takes the pawn, and I have a slight advantage, but I don't know how to really convert it. And she's slowly picking apart my queen side. And so I bring the knight over here trying to attack the queen. And there's no way that I can protect this pawn, so I brought the king into the game. And then I realized I can't really do anything with that king. They offer the pawn here, and I could say, great, I could take the pawn, but I say, no, I'm going to try to protect the knight. They go there. And then from here, I throw the check on the queen, and I get the knight out on the outpost, leaving these two here. The only problem is there's this passed pawn, which is like real scary for me. And I'm like trying to figure out if there's any way I can get my pieces coordinated to like launch an attack. She trades it off. And now we have a like end game here where like there's a passed pawn. I thought to myself here, hey, I had an advantage. But she clearly has like this advantage now. Like I should take the perpetual check and get the draw. But nope, I said, no, I'm going to go for the win at this level. Like maybe I can get it. And so I'm bringing my king over, hoping to get over here to H3, throw the check, win the game. That's my plan. She pushes up, I go here, and then she just throws queen to B4. I can't come to H3 because I have mate here. And so I come over here to F1. They throw the check. I bring the king over, and it's a king hunt over here. And there's literally nothing I can do to stop the queen from coming, and I resign from here. So, I mean, there's a couple more moves, but after taking, I just resign. And I lost my first game of the tournament. After having such a large advantage, it was really frustrating. I was really bummed out about it, and I was like, all right, great. Let's go into the last game, finish strong. You're great. And so in this last game here, I'm white. I'm playing a route about it's about a 1050 rated player to finish it off. It was about a 16-year-old boy, and we start off E4, E5. We get into Ruy Lopez. This is my bread and butter. I feel very ready to go in terms of prep. He then throws this bishop to D6 move, which I thought was weird. It's not very good for black to do that. I castle. He brings out the knight. I just protect the pawn. You know, typical Ruy Lopez stuff. He fianchettos this bishop, which is not very normal, I would say. And I just say, great, we're going to continue with our center plans here, trying to win the center. Attacks the knight. I just bring the bishop back, fortifying this pawn. All part of Ruy Lopez theory. I'm feeling very good. Engine says I'm up 2 points already. And then he brings up this C5 pawn, knowing that I'm going to push up here. But there's literally nothing he can really do to stop my attack. So I push up D4. He brings the knight out here, and that's a blunder because after kicking the knight out, I take here, and it's a pawn fork. I'm feeling very good. He doesn't even take the pawn. I take the bishop. Queen comes out, but it's hidden behind this pawn. He's going for this, but that's protected by the queen. Like, I'm feeling very good about this. I have an 11-point advantage. So I say, great, I'm gonna just fortify this center. He pushes up there. I like, great, let's lock this position down. I'm gonna attack this knight. But I forget that this knight is covering this square with this queen. And so from here, check, pull back, throws the bishop in. I take, but there's nothing I could do. I get mated after having a really strong lead. So basically in that tournament, I was winning all my games. I just didn't close out the two that mattered. Yeah, I was pretty bummed. I was pretty bummed for the rest of the day. It was pretty sad. Frenzy, but it just sucks because these are 45-minute games. I think that game ended in like less than 10 minutes between both sides. And so that sucks. That sucks. I was playing so well other than that. So like open, I ended up, I don't even know what I finished. Let's look that up. And we can see my new, let's look at my rating. So let's see where I finished in the tournament. Because I was in second going into that third game. And she was the 5th rated player at the time. Let's see who won. My last raid event was this rating here. We were in the under 1100 section. So the girl I lost to in my third game actually went on to win the whole tournament. So good on her. I finished 12th place. And so my rating, my quick rating went from 900 to 924, which is all right. And then my regular rating, so I don't know what the difference is between regular and quick rating. I went from 855 in my regular rating to 894. I got a 40-point rating jump and a 24-point rating jump on quick, but yeah, that sucked. It sucked. It sucked to lose like that. So I lost my 2 games against the 1st place player and the 3rd place player. Oh, that's frustrating. And the 3rd place player actually lost Elo after only losing 1 game. And he lost to the 4th best player. Wow. Yeah, so I'm moving up to the under 1700 division in the next big tournament. So that's where we're at. So yeah, if you guys want to check out any more tournament recaps, those videos will be here. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.